You're listening to the 405 Exchange podcast. My name is Ken Grand-Pierre, and today's episode is with Ed Lay of Editors. This man could easily win an award for being one of the kindest souls in music, and it brings me so much joy getting to share this talk with you. For those of you who don't know, Editors are a British rock band that have been releasing albums since 2005. On October 25th, they'll be releasing a greatest hits album called Black Gold. And I've been fortunate to spend a lot of time with Editors over the years, and it's kind of interesting. What I could say with confidence is that they're not a band that indulges in nostalgia, which is exactly what I aim to explore with Ed on this episode of the podcast. Together we chat about the band's career, the ways the Black Gold album is more than just a collection of singles, the new songs within the project, and more than anything else, we catch up as friends. No, seriously, I'd say that there's a 40% ratio of this talk that's just general catch-up. But yeah, this talk was such a joy to have, and it makes me happy to know that it was recorded and that I get to share it with you out there. So yeah, thank you for listening. This is the 405 Exchange with Editors.
Ed, I'm happy that we get to chat again after all this time. Before we go into the band, how are you today? I mean, you were telling me a little bit before I read the quarter, but, apart from what we're talking about, today has been good for you?
Today's been okay. Yeah, I probably won't bore anybody with my home life. But today, other than the fact that I think the 5th of October is probably one of the worst days in the calendar, so I'll just avoid it. I'll avoid it. It's cancelled for me from now on. The 5th of October will forever be dismissed.
We'll let people forever guess what you're talking about.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it's going good, man. It's going good. I mean, obviously, it's an exciting, if slightly strange period for a band to be in. Releasing a best of album. But I've kind of made my peace with it in a way.
Yeah, because when I was prepping to do this talk, and thinking about the stuff I wanted to talk to you about, I found myself feeling really curious because, yeah, it's exactly that. Like, I don't know what it would be like for a band like yours during a year like this, where you're at the end of an album campaign, but you're off the cusp of starting another one. And I wonder, is this the quickest gap between Editors releases you guys have ever done?
Oh, yeah, probably. Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, what did we do? 2005 for the Back Room, and 2007 came out for. Yeah, it would be. I guess maybe on a par with that. But that was so. That was so full on. Everything. You do your first couple of records, and you are working every single day. Today, in today's scenario, we've got a little bit more time to kick back and assess things, and we've all got families and stuff like that. So different things take different priorities. But I guess so. It's nice to be working on something so quickly. It's nice to be able to make three new songs in a matter of weeks over in LA and get them out within 6 months. That's a real fillet for us. It was a really important thing for us to go and do.
Yeah, like that's the interesting thing with me, because with knowing you guys a bit, it's actually a wild thing to imagine that you'd even want to release a best of. And I say that respectfully because you're not a particularly, like the band in general, like all of you, you're not particularly a nostalgic bunch of people.
Without a doubt. I mean, when I think the first idea of putting a best of came together, and we were all in the Piaz offices, which is our record label, and you could see our faces. So we turned into, it's like we were faced with Dracula. We held the cross, crucifixes up, and was snarling and stuff. At the person who was talking about it. But I think no band wants to put themselves in a position that they think, oh, actually we're old. We've been about it long enough to put together greatest hits or best of, or whatever you want to call it, album, and it kind of, it makes you wonder about how old you are, and if you're good enough to have done that. Does that make sense? If you've got enough history, if you've got enough class to put out greatest hits, it's a funny thing. Your favorite bands when you were younger did that. You got your kind of REMs or Tom Petty's and stuff like that, and then you look at yourselves and say, do we deserve to be in this position? But like I say, I think we've made enough of an effort with it. It's not just we'll just stick 20 tracks out and fuck it. We've put in a lot of effort in terms of artistic direction. We were so adamant it shouldn't just be just get it out and not pay any attention to it, sweep it under the carpet kind of thing. If we're going to do it, we do it properly. I think the extra content, the acoustic tracks, and actually delving back through some of the old Snowfield demos were pre-editors demos that we're gonna release as well.
Yeah,
it's kind of nice to delve through those as well for us.
That's a really beautiful thing. Go back to that meeting that you guys had at Pius, and with the faces and that. When you walked away from that room, can you talk to me a bit about what those first conversations were like when it became a reality that Black Gold was going to happen?
I think initially we were just sort of no way, it shouldn't happen. But in the cold light of day, we appreciated that if we were going to work on a whole new editor's record, which bear in mind kind of the other commitments people are having, Tom's to just come back from Nashville with Andy doing another Smith and Burroughs record, we just realised that we probably wouldn't be putting out a new editor's record for another 12 months on top of this October. So how fresh would the songs that we just recorded with Garrett feel? How fresh, how excited would we be by promoting those tracks that we recorded, 16 months previously? I think we just all felt that it would be dull and we wouldn't want to revisit that again, and we just want to get on with it and release these new tracks to the world, like we've been playing Frankenstein all summer, and it, to be honest, it feels like the biggest song in our set already. So to do that and to have two more songs to back that up that are of real quality, and they look back at what we've done, they kind of encapsulates all of the stuff that we've done as editors, but they look forward as well. It was great to get that out, and what an excuse to be able to do that rather than just putting out an EP that nobody will give a shit about.
Exactly. No, that's a really good point in that. And it's interesting the way you were talking before as well about just the initial reaction and coming around to it. It was reminding me earlier this year, Spoon also released the best of, and they had a couple new songs in there. And I remember reading an interview that Britt Daniel did, the singer of Spoon, and he was saying that what made him come around to it is the idea that a teenager is likely to go onto YouTube and kind of put on their own best of, or find a playlist that somebody else made. So in a lot of ways, it's almost like a band getting in front of that and just being able to present, having the most presentable version of their career in a distilled way for that new person coming in.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely wanted to be concise about it. I mean, you look at the track listing; it's fairly, they're kind of our most popular songs. We had a conversation where we said, we could do a double record, and we could go deeper and kind of choose really what our favourite kind of second to last track on album 3 is, and that kind of way of going about it. But you're right, everybody can do that. Everybody can put together their favourite playlist on any listening platform they want to. So for us to make something a bit more concise, like White Van Man, stick it on a CD, smash out the bangers, and then on top of that, if you really are a fan of the band, you can listen to the songs that have been reimagined acoustically, which are, you've got things like Let Your Good Heart Lead You Home, or Violence is on there, things that are a little bit deeper in our repertoire. They're not sort of front and center editors' songs. and that's kind of cool. That's kind of so we're not saying to people, oh, we're too classy to put our bangers on our greatest hits, because essentially it is that if we've got greatest hits. I'm not sure. But to have something that we can make a record out of, do a really nice packaging, do some, make a statement, in fact. And like I say, I think we've convinced ourselves that it feels like a really fun thing to do. And I've had nothing but positive feedback, actually, from everybody I've spoken to about it. So I think people are sort of remembering some good times, and it's given us that opportunity as well, actually, to kind of look back on the history that we've had, back on all the emotions that we've gone through in a way that you kind of don't allow yourself to do when you're working on new material, like exclusive new records. So to have a little bit of that going on in your mind isn't such a bad thing.
Yeah, honestly, that's something, you hit something really interesting there, because I feel very, on a personal level, I feel very privileged and fortunate that I've had the chance to spend time with you guys and a lot of other musicians. But something I've gathered from that type of way of living, and it's definitely something that's applicable to myself as well, is that when you're in that aspect of creating, you're always thinking about the next thing so much that the absolute function of just existing on a professional level is that you never really get the chance to look back at all. It's a very particular way of existing when you stop and think about it.
Totally. I mean, and you do press, and all of your press is based upon the current record, which is fine, and it obviously needs to be discussed. But when you're actually talking about from the genesis of a band right through to what's happening now, and everything that's happened in between, it just gets kind of, you do feel much more a part of the band in a way, rather than just a kind of momentary section of it. If that, yeah. So I've enjoyed it so far. I mean, it's sort of brought up some pretty incredible moments and memories that I really have sort of forgotten about, throughout, and both good and bad.
Well, would you like to explore some of the good ones with me?
Oh, sure. I mean, I was kind of, I was really watching. The Rugby World Cup's on at the moment. It's in Japan, and I was just sort of taking myself through the first time I went there with the band, and just what a mind-blowing experience that was. Have you been to Japan?
No, not yet. It's something that's right on the top of my list. I really want to do it.
I mean, if I wasn't so unsure of how busy I'd be next year, I'd try and take the kids over to see the Olympic Games, because it's just such a righteous place. It really is cool. I couldn't believe it. I was 23, 24 when I went over there for the first time, and to just experience how alien it was. I think things have changed a little bit now. Things have become a little bit more westernized, but I just felt completely in awe of it all, and kind of going to the different clubs and different parties with our label mates and stuff. It was just genuinely the most eye-opening experience I've had in the band. It was just incredible.
And it must have felt also amazing, especially at that age where you recognize the only reason you're in that position to be at a place like that, so far away from home, is from your own work. Your creativity essentially brought you there.
Well, that's it. And I know that I wouldn't have had, if I'd have stuck in my job at Customs and Excise in Ipswich, I wouldn't have got anywhere near doing something like that. And the people you meet because of that, it elevates everything. And to relate that through to being in a band, you're right. It's just, wow, I'm making. It doesn't matter if it kind of makes a living, particularly. I'm just enjoying myself, and that feeling was so good. And we came off the back of that really tired, and it was a long year, and we'd been on a long tour, and emotions were running high. But I just could not wait to get started again on the next record, and obviously you got youth on your side as well, so that helps. But
exactly.
But yeah, it's an incredible spot, and I think we all sort of discovered quite a lot about how we could be socially and just enjoy being a band as much. It's just amazing.
You know, it's a bit of a nebulous question that I want to ask you off the back of that, but I feel like it's very relative considering, like, you know, how long the band's been about. But do you feel like you guys ever struggled with grasping at the aspect of it being a career, or was that pretty seamless for you? Like that transition of like, we're doing this because we want to this is now our lives.
I think it was fairly seamless actually, because we were always so direct in our. We knew that we wanted to do it as a career. You know, we knew that we didn't want to just be a flash in the pan. We deliberately avoided London, for example. When we first started out, we played in Birmingham and kind of kept ourselves in our little incubator there. Because we thought if we worked hard and stayed out of people's way, we wouldn't really be directly influenced by anybody else. And we wanted to keep our own identity, really. And I think that's kind of always been at the forefront, our little mantra as we carried on. We never want to repeat ourselves. We never wanted to just fall in behind anybody else and what was current. And we all just wanted to work with fantastic people. And, you know, this is the first time actually we've gone back to a producer. We've worked through an awful lot of kind of world-class producers with very different styles as we've gone throughout our career, and we never once repeated for a full record. So that's kind of our outlook, was to never stand still, I suppose, and just I wouldn't say that we don't take ourselves too seriously. I think maybe sometimes we do, but I think it's because of that we have this kind of quality control and sort of lust for longevity, I guess.
Yeah, and I think what's pretty amazing, especially with that bit you said there, like when you consider about, you know, not going to London and getting kind of swept up in all that, when you think about where the band is today and how people talk about the band, it's not really in the context of people you guys came up with or that you guys are part of a scene. It's very much that you guys carved out your own path. And I think a lot of that also has to do with the fact you've never repeated yourselves. Like, that's a very significant, like, thing to have within your career.
And I think possibly in terms of, certainly in the UK, in terms of popularity, maybe because of that, because we weren't lumped in with people, because we weren't part of something bigger with our peers, maybe we could have been bigger at a certain point. But I don't think we would have carried on as we have done. And I don't think we would still be going, and I don't think we still would be looking to the future about creating new modern music with the emotion that we always have done. I just think we would have maybe been caught up in something else and something a little bit less real. And I don't think our relationships would have survived, even though, you know, we've had our ups and downs members-wise along the way. I don't think we would have kept on going. I don't think we would have felt as strong as we do now.
Yeah. You know what? Something just came to my mind as you were saying that, and it's related to it. But, you know, I remember a couple years back, you guys opened up for Manic Street Preachers, and it's like, in terms of, like, peers, in terms of shared experience, I mean, I feel like you guys can relate a lot to them in terms of, like, obviously they're big and they've had their ups and downs, but, like, it's kind of similar in the sense of, like, their popularity has gone up and down in Britain, and even for you guys in Britain, like, the shows get bigger, and, like, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like you guys can kind of relate to how their career's been in a certain way.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, they've always stood on their own 2 feet. They've never ever sort of given any quarter to following a trend. They just write good songs, and, you know, I think especially lyrically for them, they are so charged, and that's really what's got their fans on side, and they've given them they've got an incredible following because of that. People get so involved in their tunes. Yeah, no, that's a pretty good comparison. I'm happy with that, without a doubt. I kind of when it was funny because when we were leading up to that, I obviously went through their back catalogue quite a bit because I wasn't a huge Mannix fan. I think I might have missed out on that when it wasn't quite on my radar when I was growing up. And I think with bands like them and possibly us, if you don't discover a band early doors, you know you're aware of them, you kind of like them if you hear them, but you're never necessarily going to dig into what they've done. And when I did that digging, when I sort of got involved in their music, I was kind of taken aback by how clever it was, not just lyrically actually, but production wise, and the kind of sounds that they used, and the way that they intertwined electronic music and acoustic music, and you wouldn't actually have thought about it. But I was sort of listening to it on the plane one day, and I was kind of totally sucked into it. So yeah, maybe this greatest hits for us will do the same for our music to somebody else as the Manics did to me when I listened to that sort of greatest hits record on my plane journey home. Maybe people will actually realise, oh, this might be a band that I want to discover a bit deeper.
Yeah, I would definitely say that's the case. You know, I don't think I've ever told you about the first time I heard your music, actually.
No, go on.
Yeah, it's actually a bit of a funny story. I want to say I'm 29 now, and I want to say it was when I was 17. And it was, funny enough, it was an American friend of mine who played it for me. And the situation was, I was like at a party the night before, and the following day I was like hungover, and in that type of hungover state where like any interaction with another human being is like a chore, and like the world is feeling slow and all that. And I promised this friend I was gonna go hang out with him. So I remember he came to pick me up, and I was sat in the back of his car, and I was like totally just like spaced out and out of it. And he put on And Then There's a Start, like the album. And I specifically remember we're at a point in the town, because this was like in Westchester, like outside of New York City. We're at a point in the town where we had to drive through a bunch of tunnels, and there was something about hearing Smokers, and then like the title track and Bones, like in the course of going through these tunnels, the sequencing of that, it was like maybe like sundown, and it just felt so fitting. Like something about that state I was in where I couldn't focus on conversations, but I could focus on the music going on, and then the movement of the car. Yeah,
that makes sense. I mean, I always get hyper emotional when I'm hungover. You know, anything can set me off. I think that's a common theme, I guess. But for me, it just seems to really make a difference. And I think I'm really receptive to new kind of art when I'm in that state. You know, it's kind of I've found myself in art galleries when I've been hungover, and I've just been blown away by things, probably more so than I really would ever be in a normal state of mind. But also, you know, you kind of, I think tunnels do something to your mind when you're listening to music. And I remember growing up, going to France with my mum and dad, and driving through, you know, the big sort of mountainous tunnels they have that would last for sort of 3-4 miles, and kind of you come to the end and there's a crescendo, and we always seem to be listening to Tubular Bells by Mike Oldfield as we were going through, and it was a bit like that kind of Sigur Rós kind of rush as you exited the tunnel, and the kind of lights play with your mind, and I don't know, you feel that when you're kind of, it's a release, I suppose. It's like a physical release to what you're listening to, which is nice. And when it seems to match up with the music, it makes, I guess actually that's what they do when you go to techno nights and stuff. You know, the lighting is all about riding the music, and how you think. I mean, you might be pretty fucked at the same time, but how you kind of, it rides with the music and it takes you to a place. So the kind of this distinction between what you're seeing and what you're hearing, it gets very blurred, and they seem to gel so beautifully, and you think, wow, these guys are the best thing I've ever seen, because of it.
Yeah, I know.
Do you get that?
No, I did. Because I experienced the album in that way. I was like immediately taken by it, and then I went and got all the albums. I think up until that point, what was it? Weight of Your Love wasn't out yet. I think it was like maybe a year away or something. But that was actually my first. Like, I listened to all the records prior to your fourth, but your fourth record was the first record I was like a part of in terms of like being a fan and looking
big from the start.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, great. That was a cool record to work on. I think it was just so DIY, and locking yourselves away in a beautiful location. That was the first time we've kind of done that, and it was, yeah, it opened our minds a little bit to the possibilities of that.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful thing. Something that I've heard some other bands say about doing a best of, and I feel like this is kind of relative to you guys, considering where you're at and where you're going in terms of your career, is that I've heard some other acts say that the good thing about doing a best of is that it feels like a bookend where you could kind of like close a book at a certain point, and then when you go forward, like onwards with the next albums and the next songs, it's almost like a bit of a new life in a way. Like, does it feel that way at all for you guys when you think about what this Black Gold compilation is going to do?
Possibly less so, because I think, like I say, our main focus has been moving on from the next record. It hasn't necessarily been a continuation of the theme. So I don't necessarily feel like we needed to bookend it. I think I think we're on our kind of 3 album cycle anyway. So we do 3 albums and have a major shift. So we had 3 albums, then Chris left, major shift. 3 albums again, major shift, greatest hits, do something a bit different, and then we'll see what we come back with next time. I know Tom's been talking about doing something really dark, which kind of seems good to me. I mean, we're living in quite a incredibly politically charged state all over the world, and doing something pretty dark would appeal to me, to be honest. Suits the mood.
That's the interesting thing, because I actually, I know sometimes people describe your music as dark, but particularly like the last couple releases, I would say the last 3 albums in particular, I haven't really found that. I think there's been dark moments, but this might sound like a bit of a roundabout, but last week I saw Massive Attack for the first time, and I've been
cool.
Yeah, and I've been dying to see them forever. And funny enough, there was a moment in the set that made me think about your band, almost like in terms of like seeing a visual, experiencing visual, and like feeling it's like an illustrative descriptor. It was during the part where they performed the song Angel, and for people who have never seen them, behind them they have like a screen that has like a lot of like lines, and for that portion of the song, as they're performing the beginning bit, the whole stage is dark, and the light is like there's like little bulbs of light flickering behind them one by one, and it's kind of like the purpose is that it's going with the music, and it's like going through these like webbed lines that are behind them, so you're seeing the light kind of breaking through the darkness. And it made me think of your band, because I feel like what's interesting, as much as people describe your band as being dark, I feel like there's an element of like light and life coming out of darkness and kind of like permeating past it.
I mean, they are probably the first band that's referenced every time we look to getting a new stage set up. I know they've been touring that for a while, and it looks, I've seen it. In fact, I watched them. I've watched them a few times. I've been really lucky, but I watched them from the side of the stage a few years back in Spain.
Oh,
and
wow.
three. Well, it was going fine, and I was really enjoying it. But then 3D obviously saw me and decided that he didn't want me in his eye line, and he just sort of looked aside from his mic and said, "Get that fucking guy off the stage." So I was manhandled down the steps and away, and I was like, "Oh man," I was kind of getting into that. So I don't think me and him would be hanging out too much. But so yeah, did you go there as the regular punter, or were you working?
Regular punter. I went out of my way to make sure I was there just to enjoy it. And it's funny, that bit that you've said about them there. I've heard stories about them in the past about like how you could. I've heard from friends who have met them that you could either have the best time meeting them, or it could be the worst thing. It's like hot and cold. What was interesting of how they perform, though, is that I was really, because I've been dying to see them for years, and I was really curious about how it was going to be. And the way their set is like there was no banter, no acknowledgement of the crowd. It was very much the curtain went up, the curtain went down, and it was them performing. And I know some people around me, from like conversations I overheard, they found that to be quite cold. Like some people are like, "Oh wow, it's like very detached," but
Yeah,
It weird.
it's very theatrical.
Yeah,
And that's kind of, I think, what they go for. And they are from Bristol, you know. They've got a kind of dark perception to uphold, I suppose, and not too friendly.
yeah, exactly. Though the funny bit for me, and it could be my bias of just being a fan, but like I found that kind of more engaging in a way, like them being so disengaged with me as an audience member.
I mean, you've seen us tons of times. You've kind of hung out with us. We are not on stage small talk band. If that's what you want, I mean, we're more in the kind of let people get from it what they want. We're not going to tell jokes. We aren't that band. We've never have been. So I think we're kind of in the same mold as well. We'd rather kind of put on a show and barely say anything to anyone. I think I think, without sounding too corny, you let the talking, the music do that for you. You base your set list on giving a ride of emotion throughout, and by interjecting and just talking shy to anyone, you kind of lose your way a bit. Yeah. So to kind of let the audience member go on a little journey. I guess we're looking after the people that come to gigs on their own, so they don't have to sort of turn around and ask why aren't they talking to us. I think we want someone, if they come on their own, to kind of be in an immersive experience, and to be more theatrical. It really helps that.
Yeah, I would say too. Though we should add, though, you particularly you'll wave. You do that quite a bit. You'll wave from the drum kit.
I've got a very stupid grin. I can never believe my luck, Ken.
It is a beautiful thing. I want to start asking you about some of the music. Particularly, I want to ask about like these 3 new songs that you have on the Black Gold album that's coming out.
Yeah.
The first one I'm going to ask you about is Frankenstein, because, like you mentioned, it's a track that's quickly grown to become a fan favorite, and I really love it. Like, it's definitely grown to being a song I love as well. It sounds like it was a very inspiring song to make. Do you remember what the feeling was like in the studio when you guys were making it?
Well, I mean, with all of them, we got the demo from Tom first, and this one immediately was like, wow, what happens in that kind of middle 8-bit stroke chorus? It is just mad. Just the chord changes, the everything about it. Lyrically, it's mental. I don't think we've ever had anything back from Tom that's so kind of wacky, and we were just genuinely kind of, fuck, what do we do with this song? How do we turn this into an edited song but don't lose that instant like vibe that Tom obviously wanted to implant on it? It's kind of one of these things. When it really took off in the studio, we tried to get this kind of hook, just this nice kind of beat going on, and you kind of reference Frankie Goes to Hollywood in that first section. That's kind of what we tried to hook onto, something that really drags you in, that kind of pulsing rhythm. And then it just flies, and it just keeps on flying. And to get to a sort of crescendo, we didn't want to hit anything too soon. It's just build and build and build, and just, get somewhere nuts. And I think the challenge for that one was like, can we get a song that mental onto the radio? And it proves that we can. So, mind you, who knows what's going to go on radio? I mean, God knows. It's probably, like I say, it's probably one of the most mental songs that we'd ever worked on, and just trying to harness it, and not lose sight of where it should be going. Make it into a song, but don't lose its kind of edge.
Yeah, I noticed that with some of the set lists for your summer festivals that you just did, that you would have that song at the end.
Yeah. I think because we instantly thought that it would be a song that you could not know the lyrics to, not know how it went, but kind of just instantly dance to, and kind of lose your inhibitions to a little bit, and that kind of worked. And it's got a kind of a chanty mantra to it as well. So, we got people oohing and shouting at the end.
That's fucking amazing. And I have to say, I also love how the video for this one came about. It's one of those where it's very striking to watch, and like I couldn't help but wonder how this one was pitched to you guys.
It kind of it read almost exactly as it turned out. Somebody pretending to be Beyonce is resurrected from the dead by a madman who falls in love with her madly, and when she sort of relinquishes that love, she's obviously a computer zombie. It was totally off the scale, and it was difficult because we've had this incredible relationship with Rahi Rizvani, who has been working with us since in Dream, and he's been our photographer and videographer, and we've got a huge amount of trust in him, and we're kind of like a reciprocal muse, I'd say. He gets a lot from working with us, and we get a hell of a lot from working with him. And to think we should maybe start this with somebody else, get other people to pitch in, was a difficult decision. But I think we felt because it was the best of, it wasn't a continuation of our relationship as much. It was a time to be a little bit more playful, a little less serious, maybe. And in fact, we've done that with some press shots as well. We've done the recent press shots with Nadav Kandar, which is kind of a real coup for us. He's an incredible portrait photographer. So yeah, just kind of go off grid a little bit. I think that was what we wanted to do.
Yeah, and I think that was definitely a good choice in terms of just like, I think a relationship that you have with Ray could only get better in terms of just like, getting inspiration from elsewhere across the board from both of you, because like naturally he works with other artists as well. So like, yeah, it just makes it's like that. It's kind of like a film director working with other actors. It's just like natural. It's a natural thing, really.
Without a doubt. The first time we met Rahi, he came along to where we were doing our recording in the absolute middle of nowhere in Scotland. It's sort of 3 hours drive from Glasgow airport, and he brought his kind of entourage with him, a couple of helpers and his producer and people like that. And he basically, the first thing he told us to do was get our tops off and just sit down in front of the camera. And to us, I maybe because we're in the middle of nowhere when we were maybe going stir crazy anyway, it maybe didn't feel like as big a jump as we thought, or maybe it was just such a shock to the system first of all that he immediately knew that we would do anything he wanted us to do. And because of that, he's seen a side of us that no other photographer has been able to get, because he developed that initial part fright, part trust kind of relationship.
That's really something else. And wow, that's
you do not want to see those topless shots.
I don't think I do, to be honest.
None of us come out well.
But I just wanted to add about the Frankenstein video. I think what it really achieves is that it's showing this depraved joy, but it's very unflinching. Like, I think it's kind of it's a hard thing to do in 2019 to show violence and depravity and making sure that it's not in any way glamorized. I feel like that's what the video does well, because you're never put in a place to feel bad for this guy, because you're very much watching this sense of recklessness and selfishness. Like, it's conveyed very much throughout the video. Absolutely.
I'm glad it's come across like that, because there's kind of one part in it where we thought, is that pushing it too far? It's like the police brutality thing. But then you got this Beyonce character dancing, and he's got this manic grin on his face. And you kind of, I think it's all right. I think it gets away with it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Personally, that police brutality thing, like, I thought it was important to see that, because the fact that you see he's clearly getting joy out of it, I feel like for me personally as a viewer, it immediately made me go like, well, this is someone I can't relate to.
Yeah. Good. Oh, that's good, because this is the tiny little things you kind of worry about and beat yourself up about, and so to hear someone you trust coming back with something like that, that's exactly how we wanted it to come across.
No, exactly. Another newer songs I was keen to ask you about is Upside Down. It amazes me how a song like this could have such a contrast of sounding new and familiar, because like the keyboards feel right out of like an 80s film, but the song doesn't feel dated. And also you got to play a whole lot of fucking drums on this one, so how did this one come about?
Yeah, the question is, Ken, how the fuck are we going to do it live?
That's always the best question, isn't it?
We'll work it out. Yeah, man, it's just all groove, this song. It's just such a pleasure to sit back in that groove and let it wash over you. It's great. Yeah, man. What more can I say about Upside Down? It just felt, you're right, like that was the first song we attacked, actually, in the studio with Garrett. He really made this song, I've got to be honest. I mean, we had it down as something, oh, this is good, but it sounds really editor's familiar. And it just got elevated by this. The production on it is just mind-blowingly clever. Like, just the sounds he chooses and the little bits of the little minor changes that he adapts through every instrument throughout the song. They're just minute, but they make so much difference to the feel of it. And it just got the bounce is key. Russell's like killer on it. The drums sound fly, you know. It's just kind of as close to a hip-hop kind of Gabriel song that we could ever get to, I suppose.
I would say that's very true. Do you love how, like, just the loudness of the drums? Because that's something that stuck out to me a lot listening to it.
Yeah, of course, because, you know, whenever it comes to mixdown, my first feedback is always, just turn the kick and the snare up a bit, you know, just a bit more. I'm always asking for more. Drummers always want to hear more drums. I mean, no matter probably who you talk to throughout recording through history, you always want to hear it a little bit more. But I appreciate that singers need to have their lyrics heard, and I'm willing to compromise.
You know what? Hearing you say that just made me think. Can I recommend something for you real quick? Please do. Yeah. I'm sure you're more than familiar with Patrick Carney of the Black Keys and that.
Yeah.
Him and Dan from the Black Keys. They were recently on the Joe Rogan podcast, and it is one of the most hysterical things I've listened to in a while, because I've heard them in interviews before, but I've never heard them like on a long form conversation. And Patrick is one of the funniest human beings I've ever listened to, where he's just biting about the music industry and very direct about things, and he's a pisser, man. He's really hilarious.
Oh, cool. Yeah, well, I mean, we're talking about great producers. They are two of the best, man. I always, it amazed me how big they got in the UK without anybody noticing.
Yeah.
You sort of all of a sudden looked around like, shit, they're headlining Reading.
It was the same thing here in the States. Like, they had a tune, naturally, like the Tighten Up tune. Like, that got big. But it was, like, a very overnight thing, even though they've been around for ages already. Like, it was a really wild thing.
Yeah, I've got a lot of respect for them. Did they produce that Lana Del Rey album? Was that Ultraviolence?
Dan did. Dan produced did. Yeah, Ultraviolence. That's my favorite record.
Oh, my God. It sounds so good. I had a period in my life of about 3 weeks, and I could not stop listening to that. I just couldn't. I just had it on repeat on trains and stuff. I just loved it. I don't know why. It sucked me in completely. Brilliant.
Yeah, exact same here. And it was like one of those things where like it felt like it really hit the right chord at the right time when I heard it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'm not cool about that Charlie's Angels song. I think that's naff. It was such a shame because, you know, they're three pretty good artists in their own right. I think Miley Cyrus at Glastonbury this year was incredibly good. She impressed me wildly. I thought her voice was pretty insane. And, you know, Ariana Grande, she's got some tunes, but that Charlie's Angels song sucks.
I haven't heard it yet. I feel like that's one of those where I'm going to instantly make a face when I hear it.
It's just on the radio constantly in this country at the moment. You know, you get these periods. 1 week it's just Ed Sheeran wall to wall, and then it's this Charlie's Angels song does my head in. But hey ho,
mate. You know what's so funny about you bringing that up? So like, right before we started talking, my girlfriend Sarah's over. Like, we live together now in Brooklyn. And right before she left, I was like on Twitter, and like for some reason the British charts were being pushed onto me. And do you know what the top album has been this year and last year?
Oh, I mean, would it be Sheeran?
It's surprisingly no, but close though.
Close. Oh.
Well, actually, I mean close. Like, I think his is number 3. But
okay, got you.
yeah, but in terms of like number 1, it's the fucking Greatest Showman soundtrack.
Oh my days!
What the fuck is shit?
I mean, it was a phenomenon. I grant you that, but
How?
Jesus. Oh, geez, that's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really sad. The soundtrack
it
being
is.
number 1.
And like I kind of went on like a mini rant to Sarah, and she was like, like getting ready and that, not paying me any mind. And I kind of went on like a near conspiracy theorist thing, because I was just thinking to myself like, all right, I know sometimes with the charts, it's like if an album gets bought like a lot at one point, it's a lot for other albums to catch up. But for it to cross over to like over a year, that means people are still buying it.
Yeah, that always made me wonder about things like the XX records. Like, who the fuck hasn't got this already?
Yeah, especially for a country that's so small.
Yeah, it's incredible when things like that just take off. I guess you have it in, you get the supermarkets like Sainsbury's and Tesco's and stuff, and when they stock something, that's when you realise something's going to be big. They're selling vinyl in supermarkets now.
Oh yeah, they do that here as well. It's kind of it's weird. It stands out quite a bit, like.
Yeah. They haven't necessarily got the most up-to-date stuff in. I saw Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms there on record. I was like, that's pretty cool, but I can't imagine anybody in my town's going to buy that.
Yeah, I honestly can't. The funny thing with that, and I'll get off the Greatest Showman, I promise. But I guess the thing with the Greatest Showman, I was thinking like maybe it's like guys who end up getting with like girls. They have like girlfriends, right? And then they're going to meet the parents for the first time, whether it's like a random dinner or a holiday, like Christmas, and they just get the vinyl as like a easy to go gift for like a girlfriend's mom, maybe.
I think you've pretty much hit the nail on the head there. Yeah. In fact, maybe I got it for somebody as well.
The charts, such funny business.
Oh shit, yeah.
Yeah. And we arrive, jumping back into the music that you've lovely created with your band. We arrive at the title track, Black Gold. This is one of those tracks that reminds me how you guys use the studio as an instrument. And we brought up Massive Attack before. I've talked to Justin a lot about them as well, and he said the same thing you did, where they're always at the forefront of their mind in terms of how they like to how you guys like to operate the studio. Can you describe to me the logistical tissue that went into this track? Because I feel like it took a lot to put it together. Yeah,
it did. It was probably the most. I wouldn't say it was the easiest one to do. It was slightly frustrating at times. You kind of go through days and you get a lot done. With this one, it was like, whoa, maybe it was because it was such a. I don't know. Maybe it was such an obvious song. Maybe it's like, oh, this is. I know what's supposed to be here, but trying to get something to make you look up and go, oh, that's good, is so much more difficult in that sort of instance. If it's something that you don't know how the song's going to go, a bit more like Frankenstein, you can chuck anything in. It's like, whoa, that's interesting. But with something that's kind of, I'm really trying not to say the word formulaic, but it is a song that just instantly gets you like, I know what's cool in this song. I know what's going to happen. And it's got my head nodding, but where are the interesting sounds going to come from? So, yeah, I think we all went into our own little worlds really hard on this one. I had my own little station. Elliot had his own. He was constantly tinkering with cool sounds. Justin was playing more guitar than he has ever done in the last 5 years, trying to work stuff out. And I think we all had a busyness for this song, because we all knew how kind of cool it should sound, how that stomp should be in place, and everybody's kind of working to the same same rhythm, but everybody needs to put their little bit of identity on it to make it fly. And I think we got it. It was also it was such a fun thing because when we went over to LA, like we had 2 days before we started recording just to acclimatise and hang out. We went out and we realised that there was a LAFC football match, soccer match, going on, and it was like 2 games into their season. So we got tickets to go and see them. We went down to the is it the Memorial Coliseum in LA, like the old Olympic Stadium? They play next door to that.
Yeah.
And so that was cool. So they've got this new stadium, and they had this end. It was pretty much the game was pretty much sold out, but they had one end with about sort of 4,000 people in it, and they are like the ultras. And this team is 2 years old, and they made the most incredible noise, and they were jumping and dancing and singing some obviously put together songs, and they were trying to create an atmosphere, but my God, it worked. And we had the best time. They won like 4-0, and we were and they play in black and gold, and so they were like LA black and gold. It's like, fuck, we've got to record this song, and we've got to make a good job out of it, because it feels like it was a bit of a sign that we should, out of the kind of demos we've got, we should pick this one and we should make this happen, because we're in LA. We've just seen LAFC playing in their black gold, and we kind of had this idea that black gold would be a great title for the best of. Yeah, that was pretty amazing, being inspired by something that's completely removed from the music.
I think what it speaks a lot to as well is like considering what your life is, like being in front of audiences and seeing that interconnectivity and people being within a moment. I think it's really powerful that you could, I mean, obviously we've loved football for ages, but when you're in a moment like that that's so potent, I think now in 2019, when you see people, you know, arguably speaking, more divided than ever, when you're in a moment like that, when everyone's connected, it stands out, I think, doubly more than it ever has before, probably.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And I think, I mean, football is intrinsically linked to music as well. You know, the best eras of football teams, you relate them to certain types of music, and you know, lads going out seeing one of my best days ever is I support a team called Ipswich Town, and I watched us in the playoff final at Wembley get promoted to the Premier League, and then in that same day, so we won like 4-2, and that same day I walked across from Wembley Stadium to Wembley Arena and watched Pearl Jam in my Ipswich Town kit. And that was such a cool day, you know, twinning my two passions in one, and I certainly wasn't the only person doing that. So you get these kind of groups of people that are so involved in music and football, and that it just, everything plays together, you know.
Yeah, no, that is so true, and fucking hell, man. You know,
that was a day.
Yeah. Tell me this: are these 3 songs the new ones that are on Black Gold? I mean, you mentioned before like how you guys wanted to put them out so that way it wouldn't feel stale, like, you know, 16, 20 months from now. But would you say, like, in a way, they're a good gauge of where the band is going in terms of songwriting?
It's really hard to say. I mean, I think at the moment there's certainly songs that we feel reflect where we are. But, again, in another 12 months' time, where are we going to be? Who can possibly say? Where's Tom going to be? He's just recorded another record. He will have changed in that time. The songs that he writes will have changed. So I don't know. I wouldn't read too much into it, to be honest. And also, goodness only knows if we'll be working with Jackknife Lee again. I mean, we all had an absolute blast. Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll move on to Past Is New once more, because kind of, as I've said before, that's kind of our raison d'etre.
Yeah, no, I would say that's a very good point. I have a couple more questions for you. What's really wild about getting to talk to you today and with the legacy of your band is knowing that we have the chance to like make a long episode like this, and knowing people are definitely still listening.
Well, let's hope so. Big up to those people still listening.
I definitely reckon so. Something I like to do, because I think it's always fun being a bit meta, is when you have the ability to like talk directly to the audience, especially in the form of a podcast. Ed, there are people listening right now who have loved your band for a very long time. Is there anything you'd like to say to them?
Oh man. Well, yeah, I guess. I mean, I've gone through. I think we've all gone through some serious stuff together, both as a band and fans. And the band, I think people that have been with us, especially since day one, have realised kind of that we haven't been the easiest people to get along with. But we've always maintained that our reason for being a band is that we wanted to just produce the best things that we could, and if we don't do the things that people necessarily expect or want us to do, then that's the way it is, and that's the way that I think people appreciate us for sticking to those guns, So just it's cool. It's great to have everybody along. I mean, we don't come to the United States as much as we would like. I really hope we can do so on the next tour. It was so fun to come back and just do those few shows last year. That was a real fillet for me. I miss it. I miss that kind of. There's towns just like New York or LA where I have such familiarity yet, because I hadn't been for sort of 8 years or so. It was just things had changed, and it just felt exciting again to go back. So I kind of want a bit more of that.
Yeah, and I mean, with the way you have to tour the States, where it's a very like concise and kind of stripped back aspect of just like bringing with you just the essentials, and that must feel pretty nice too, because it probably brings you back to like those early days as well.
Yeah, a little bit. Although I kind of forget how shit I am at tuning drums, and when I've not got someone to rely on to do it for me, oh my God, I feel the pressure. And yeah, so I'm not keen on that, but if we'd come again, I promise to maybe go to a little class. Tuning drums is like a dark art, honestly.
Oh yeah.
It is just the weirdest thing. Nothing tends to make sense. You think, oh, this will be exactly what you need to do, but no, it's almost entirely the opposite. It changes every day because of the room. You look up above you and go, how high is that ceiling? What's the curve of it? Is there an angle to do with it? And it will just change any little space you're in. So yeah, my advice also directly to the listeners: if you're a drummer, learn to do it really well. Otherwise, otherwise just give up. Go and learn another instrument.
You saying that reminded me of something I heard Patrick Carney say in that interview, where he was talking about like how for ages the Black Keys never made money, and like they grew up in like working class. So he was saying that like when they would see other bands, he could never imagine being in a position where he'd want to pay someone to like tune his drums and that. And then when they finally like got big and stuff like that, and they were able to hire crew, he came to realize that the reason you hire crew is that 9 times out of 10 they do everything a bazillion times better than you.
Oh man, more than that, more than a bazillion in my case.
I have a couple more questions for you, but before I jump into them, I actually wanted to bring up something kind of wild. Did you know the reason, not the only, but arguably the biggest reason Arctic Monkeys are big in the States is because of the Black Keys?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
How was that happening?
They took them on their like not their first arena tour, but like their first proper support, doing an arena tour of the States, and it was like it was a very well attended tour that sold really well. It wasn't the album Brothers. I think it was El Camino or in between,
Mm-hmm.
but let's see. Arctic Monkeys were touring Suck It and See at the time. And it was one of those things where, like, it exposed them to a lot more Americans that live in, like, the outer cities and the outer towns and that. And that kind of, like, helped their songs. Because it was, like, people in New York and L.A. and, Austin knew of Arctic Monkeys. But outside of that, it was pretty, like, limited in scope.
It just shows how important touring and the correct support group touring is to bands who are starting out, or in case of the Monkees, they're starting out trying to make get some traction in America. For us, we did a tour of Franz Ferdinand on the Backroom, and twinned with a couple of other things. It was timing, and it was just exactly the right people to pitch to. It did so much for us, and you just wonder, with record labels being what they're on, but quite short-sighted about things like that, whether people lose the opportunity to kind of do that today. God, I sound like an old git, but I think like the proper support tour, getting known by the right people, getting your sort of fan base to be more inclusive. That's why we went on tour with Mannix again. We kind of felt maybe disconnected a little bit in the UK, and we felt that fan base wasn't necessarily tuned into us. We chose to do it because we kind of respect the band, and we just respect their audience as well. And I think if you go in with the respect for someone's audience, you'll get it back.
Yeah, that's so true. God, I wish I could have seen that tour of Franz Ferdinand. That must have been amazing.
Oh, it was us and the Rakes and Franz Ferdinand, and it was fucking brilliant.
Oh fuck, that must have been amazing. Shit.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I mean, obviously, so Franz were on their second album. They just released Do You Wanna? I think, was it Do You Wanna? Yes. So obviously everybody loved them from their first record. That was such a huge success, and they were coming pretty quick off the back of that with their second record, and we were just fledgling band coming out that summer, and it did huge amounts for us.
God, that's so fucking cool. Jumping back to the questions I wanted to ask you, I feel like with where the band is now, your band, of course, is that everything you do is with a matter of intention, especially in terms of the artistry. I feel like Editors is now a very well-oiled machine, and I just kind of want to explore with you how important that is for you, that element of intention.
Yeah, it is. Maybe we overthink too much at times. I think we can be guilty of that, because there's a lot of experience in the band now. We've got, since Chris left, we got in Justin, who he's just got so much going on all the time. He's got a record label. He's involved in different bands. He records tons of bands. He understands what he wants to do personally and with Editors, and then you kind of got everybody else's strong opinions on top of that. You got Elliot, who's kind of in his spare time he does house music, and he's a house DJ. He's kind of got his own thing going on there as well. So we've got a lot of input from all of us in the band, and it can be quite difficult occasionally to get to exactly what we all agree on. So, but having said that, that's the way you should. You should talk these things through. You should get all the good ideas, get all the bad ideas down, and then we can come up with something pretty special every time. Then we've always said we've had a good shit filter. If something's a bad idea, it doesn't tend to get any traction. It often gets pushed aside really quickly because the five of us, we know what makes something good in our own mind, but that's the only level you can judge anything on it. If we started trying to second guess things, it wouldn't work, and we'd be found out straight away. So within our own minds, with what we like, how we view things, how we view other bands and their careers, if we put as much concentration into every release as we have done previously, I don't think we'll get too much wrong.
I think that's true, and I think Violence being the latest release that you guys had prior to this Black Gold record, Violence, if it's the best achievement of that record is essentially that, like, there was no fat to trim. There was every matter of intention within the songs, and I think what you just said, it's a true testament to what you guys achieved on that album.
Oh, cool. I'm glad. I'm really proud of that record. It shows a real balance, I think, between every one of us. I love the way it's produced, the way we used Black Mass and Leo Abrahams, and we kind of, even though they never met, we kind of, the trade-off between their values was kind of spot on. Yeah, it was a great time making that record. It came out of a pretty dark period for everybody, you know, with things like the Paris attacks. We were out on tour when that happened, and I think it affected us all massively. We're in Strasbourg actually when it happened, and our day the next day we were in Lyon. Sorry, I've got really heavy right at the end.
No, it's all right.
The next day we were in Lyon, and we were supposed to have a gig, but everything got cancelled for the 3 days of national mourning. So we kind of had a lot of time to ourselves, and it was amazing. I went out and went to sort of like a vigil which was going on all throughout the night in the main square of Lyon, and kind of let it all wash over me, because it was to hear something like that unfold when it's something. Even though we weren't in Paris at the time, they're our touring family, you know. When attacks like that happen, they don't happen just to the people involved, they happen to everybody in the same sort of mindset or in the same kind of extended family. So, yeah, it was a real grieving process. But so, yeah, to come out of stuff like that and go into recording a record, you take some baggage with you, and I think as long as you use it and you put some positivity into going, we want to make this record as incredible as we can, it kind of helped in a weird way.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me, and thanks for, you know, being so candid about that feeling, you know? It's important.
Oh, that's cool. Well, you know, that like I said right at the start, I mean, these doing a greatest hits or a best of, it does dredge up all the feelings throughout your career, whether they're sort of positive or negative. But I think as long as you get to the end, as long as we get to this point, we're releasing this record, it pretty much adds up to something very special. So, I'm glad of it. I'm glad of it all.
Well, going off that kind of leads to the last question I want to ask you, because, you know, it is such an interesting thing having you guys release this album, Black Gold, and you know, you were saying like earlier how it's not necessarily a bookend, considering the fact you guys have always done stuff differently. But tell me, like, I would love to hear you kind of describe where Editors is at today and how you foresee the band evolving, at least in the immediate sense. Because, you know, you obviously can't predict the future, but it's kind of funny when you consider how like Justin and Elliot are so well ingrained within the fabric of the band now. And you and Rahi, the guys in Rahi, like always collaborate, and there's a true sense of like artistic tissue. I mean, how do you feel about where the band is today?
I think we've throughout the last two records, Within Dream and Violence, I think we've kind of opened the door a little bit. We were slightly internal before. I think we've opened the door to external influence a little bit more than we ever have done. You know, getting Blank Mass involved was fairly off the hook. It wasn't necessarily something that we should be doing as an indie band from Birmingham. Working with Rahi and getting that kind of relationship, like the U2 Anton Corbin kind of thing, you know, where there is a symbiotic kind of thing going on, and for him to be so involved in the inspiration behind some of our music as well, and being there at the genesis of some tracks, which he has been, is pretty special. So I think before we'd have shied away from something like that. So I think we're a bit more outward looking going forward.
That's a really special thing to be, isn't it?
Yeah, man. It's quite. It releases. I wouldn't say we felt shackled before, but it's easy when you experience something else to realise, there's something else that we could do and we could maybe be special at.
Yeah. And, I mean, what an amazing thing that you could say that, because, I mean, I say this respectfully, but I suspect you guys have already been doing this longer than you even initially expected. I mean, obviously you always wanted Editors to be a career, but you guys have gotten to this for such a long time.
Oh, totally. But then I think we toured with REM a few years back, and they that was actually their last world tour. So it's a shame that they sort of left at that point. But then we see people like The Cure. We played with The Cure this summer and last, and to see what effect they still have on people and how they're still enjoying it. I don't know. It kind of, even though I don't necessarily feel like I should be playing Munich when I'm 55, or if I could be playing Munich when I'm 55, maybe that's kind of inspiring. They're still getting a lot from it. So, let's continue.
Yeah. Well, Ed, this was fantastic. I mean, I'm really glad we got to catch up and go into, the fabric and the career of the band at equal measure. We got to chat about The Greatest Showman. So that's always
great. That was my highlight, Ken. maybe next we can rent it out together and we can watch it over Skype or something.
We probably could, because I have never seen it. So the funny bit with that is, like, for me not having seen the movie, maybe like it actually deserves having the accolade of like being the most successful record in Britain.
My daughter's fairly obsessed with it, and I went and saw my brother in New Zealand over last Christmas, and we took the kids, and on the way back, we were sort of slightly split up from my daughter. She was in the middle of a kind of row in the middle of one of those massive planes, and she was watching The Greatest Showman with her headphones on, belting the tunes out, and it was like we were trying to lean across to her, say, "You've got to sing quiet, don't sing, there's people trying to sleep," and she was just absolutely going for it. She's got the charm enough to pull it off, and nobody was too pissed off with her, but you got to teach them somehow.
Oh, the joy of a child, right?
Yeah, quite.
Our superheroes, well, where are they now? Put your foot down till the petrol runs out.